Morning, Abigail. Yeah, again? Yeah, again?
Yes. Can you hear the anthem?
Yes, yes.
No.
Hi, Abigail. Can you?
Hello, everyone. We welcome you from all over the world on over 50 countries.
You were in there twice. You were in there one time on the phone and one time on your picture. So on your picture, you need to turn your microphone on, please.
Yes, I've done that.
Now we got you on two pictures.
I have a muted
This one you have to unmute then. You have to decide which one.
I have done that.
Okay, try now. Abigail,
All
can
right.
you say something, please?
Can you hear me?
No.
Can you hear me?
Okay, now I think we can hear you. In there twice, that gives an echo, so you can only be in there once, please.
Let me put one off. One second, please. Put one off. All right. Okay. How is it now?
No, it's perfect. So we're ready to go.
Okay. Good day, everyone. We welcome you on behalf of African Tourism Board. We welcome you to the virtual celebration of the International Day of the African Child. We welcome all our industry veterans, our stakeholders, and from all over the world. Today is a very significant day all over the world where children and youth are celebrated and issues that concern them are discussed and brought to the front burner. So we expect robust discussions Today we have a lineup of amazing speakers and who would be looking at issues basically around the children and the issues that affect children and youths in the tourism industry. And we make the industry more beneficial, at more advantage to the children and to our youths. We're going to also examine the challenges and see how we can make tourism more accessible to our children and youth, and see how we can mitigate risks that they face and challenges that they face in the tourism industry. So I warmly welcome you from South Africa, from Morocco, from London, from India, all over the world. We're excited to have you today. Our first speaker is Dr. Walter Mzembi. Is a known face and a known name in the industry. He's a veteran, an international tourism consultant. He was the Minister of Tourism of Zimbabwe, and afterwards Minister of Foreign Affairs of Zimbabwe as well. In February, he was appointed to the position of Zimbabwe's Minister of Tourism, as I stated, and hospitality industry, where he served until his appointment as Minister of Foreign Affairs in October 2017. He retired from public service following the rearrangement of the Zimbabwean government in November 2017. He is a former member of the United Nations World Tourism Organization Executive Council and served as UNWTO Regional Commission for Africa Chairperson, comprising of all African countries and their respective tourism ministers. He capped off his UNWTO stint with a sterling and distinguished campaign for the post of Secretary General of the World Tourism Organization, emerging as first runner-up to the current Secretary General. So at this point, I want to welcome Dr. Walter Mzembi to this special occasion. Is Dr. Walter, I'm sure is he in here at the moment?
Thank you, Abigail.
Yes, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.
It's so nice to have you this morning.
Thank you.
Nice to have you.
Afternoon,
yes,
I still
want to say more about your profile. So in a couple of minutes, we'll have you discussing about your topic. Also, Dr. Walter Mzembi was appointed as Deputy Minister of Water Resources and Management. And he championed tourism development in his country and advanced tourism policy at the African Union level for its mainstreaming into the AU Agenda 2063 and policy institutionalization after realizing that the tourism sector was missing in the Agenda 2063. He's a renowned leader of tourism. Dr. Mzembi is a recipient of numerous national and international accolades and awards. Amongst them is the African Tourism Minister of the Year of 2011, Public Service Manager of the Year 2012. He is the Zimbabwean Institute of Management, 3 times president of the New York-based Africa Travel Association. He is the international board member of the Berlin-based Institute of Cultural Diplomacy. And now it's president for the Africa chapter in recognition of his excellence in diplomacy and African politics. He is a sought-after speaker at home and abroad and accredited by the prestigious London Speakers Bureau. Dr. Mzembi received the highest rating as the best performing minister in 2014, confirming the 2013 rating in a mass public opinion conducted and endorsed by one of the leading newspapers in the country, the Daily News Zimbabwe. Dr. Walter Mzembi was conferred as honorary academician to the European Tourism Academy by the European Council on Tourism and Trade in 2013. That's a recognition that demonstrates his expertise and innovation and creativity in transforming tourism for sustainable growth and development. And in January 2015, the New York Times, in its publication of the World 52 Must-Visit Destinations, scored Zimbabwe number 14, citing it as a once avoided but now a must-visit destination, a rating largely attributed to the re-engagement and rebranding efforts and marketing efforts of Dr. Walter Mzembi, led with great success. He has a passion for tourism and biodiversity conservation management. He has contributed to discuss regionally and internationally on the subject of tourism and biodiversity, zero tolerance to poaching in Africa by 2020. That led the UNWTO commissioning a study towards measuring the economic value of wildlife and watching tourism in Africa. And this document is available online. Dr. Mzembi is a registered professional engineer with the Engineering Council of Zimbabwe, a fellow of Zimbabwe Institute of Engineers, and a member of the Engineering Institute of Zambia. Apart from his engineering qualifications, he holds a Bachelor of Business Studies degree, Masters of Business Administration in Production Management from Azteca University in Mexico, and he is a recipient of field research-based doctoral degree entitled An Exploratory Study of Conservation Management in Zimbabwe, a Governance Perspective, that he attained in 2015 from Aldersgate College, Philippines. Dr. Mzembi oversaw the successful co-hosting of the 20th session of the United Nations World Tourism Organization, UNWTO General Assembly in Victoria Falls in 2013 by Zimbabwe and Zambia, the third time in the history of UNWTO General Assembly that this has happened on the African soil after Egypt and Senegal held them in 1995, respectively. Now, Dr. Mzembi is currently a global consultant on risk analytics and investment advisory, focusing on the African continent. He is based in Johannesburg, South Africa. You're welcome, Dr. Walter. You are our first speaker today. And today being the International Day of the African Child, we want you to share your thoughts on the theme of today's occasion, which is targeting children and youths in African tourism development. Over to you.
Thank you, Abigail. Good day to all Africans on this platform and non-Africans. You've been very generous. It's seldom that we get all these citations after you've left office. So I truly appreciate your accolades and recognition of my trajectory in the tourism sector. Having said that, let me say that the theming the inclusion of children and the youth in African tourism development going forward is most strategic. The children of Soweto and the 1976 uprising we commemorate today would have been parents and grandparents of the generation Z and Y, collectively known as the millennials, if they had survived. And I'm happy that we bring them into focus this year under the ATB banner. I therefore want to thank you, Abigail, our moderator and chairperson, for the Technology, Innovation, Free Movement and Travel Facilitation Committee for your heroic thoughtfulness in coming up with this theme that targets children and the youth in post-COVID tourism development. And I must hasten to say that any recovery strategy that excludes the generation Y and Z will not fly. And here is why. It is now generally accepted that Africa has been spared the brunt of COVID-19. Some of the reasons advanced include, inter alia, divine providence. Some alluded to our tropical climate in Africa, and yet others also allude to our genetics as Africans. But it is Africa's youth demographics that are currently at the center of discussion. In the global epicenters where coronavirus is ravaging, deaths in the 65 years age bracket and above are estimated to be around 80%. And although nobody's risk is zero, we can agree that we have been spared COVID-19's devastating impact in Africa. Our vulnerabilities are not as high. For the first time, everyone is agreeing that the African youth bulge has created a dividend of sorts in the health sector. And Africa is the fastest growing and most youthful population in the world. We are estimated to be hosting some 50% of the 1.3 total population of 1.3 billion total population of Africa in the age category 0 to 24. 24 being the cap of the definition of youth according to UN definitions. So given the trajectory of COVID-19 in Africa, it is relatively safe to reposition Africa as a corona-resilient continent, bar some hot spots which we are already aware of, which are in the public domain. And we have to sell how our youthfulness has become a dividend and a blessing, and with the accompanying domino factor, which has spared us the brunt of the virus. We are still under 7,000 deaths, as it were, notwithstanding, of course, the fact that some recent competitiveness rankings have actually done a bit of injustice to Africa. And here I allude to just recently, I think in the last 2 days, we have had a report by Deep Knowledge Group, which ranks the 100 safest destinations in the world. And on the top of that ranking is Switzerland. On the bottom is South Sudan. I wouldn't really query this ranking if it wasn't for the fact that only 4 African countries appear in these 100 safest rankings. Only 4, starting with South Africa on the number 69 slot, and you have Egypt, you have Algeria included in these safe destinations. Why the injustice of exclusion of Africa is because of the criteria, which includes quarantine efficiency, monitoring, detection, health readiness, but more importantly, government efficiency. And I think it is on government efficiency where we have been found wanting, because our statistics are not considered to be reliable. So we then see countries like South Africa, obviously, which appear and most evidently have been compliant with very strict quarantine efficiency, monitoring, detection, and health readiness, appearing, notwithstanding their high death cases, appearing to be safer than countries without even a single death on the continent. And what is even more disturbing is the fact that some of the countries, the world's epicenters, are actually in this bracket of the safe destinations. And they include, inter alia, countries like the United States with 2.37 million cases, 118,000 deaths, but they are on number 58 Brazil with 890,000 cases, 43,000 deaths on number 91. Russia, 537,000 cases, 7,000 deaths on number 61. India, 332,000 deaths, 332,000 cases, 9,800 deaths, even higher than Africa, number 56. And yet we have many, many African countries, upwards of 20, with not a single death out of coronavirus. Many of them single digit, but they don't appear on these competitiveness rankings. What I'm submitting here, Africans, is that unless we take the responsibility ourselves of fixing our national brands, of endorsing ourselves, of coming up with our own parameters to endorse ourselves as a safe destination, but cognizant of the fact that we must also be reliable governments that submit reliable information so that we don't endanger future arrivals or future tourists who continue to be the victims of other people's own rankings or other countries and institutions' own rankings, which consign us to the dustbin of undesirables in terms of national branding. And it is here in this spectrum of competitiveness rankings that we find our Y and Z generations, the children and youth of Africa, most wanting, because they should be the ones actually confounding some of these statistics, because they are techno-savvy, they move with their smartphones, tablets, and they are able to check and verify some of these statistics and dismiss them for what they are. So my number one message to you is that we really have to stand up and defend our African continental brands, because we may find that, notwithstanding the fact that Providence and many other factors, including the African demographics that I share with you now, have spared us from the brand of the coronavirus, will be actually at the bottom of the rankings in terms of attractiveness as a destination going forward. That's message number one. And secondly, it is the fact that the millennials that we commemorate today, 0 to 35 years, are actually the post-virus industry ski driver. It is estimated by the WTTC that this market alone may have been responsible for 200 billion in terms of income in 2018, the millennials. Their propensity to travel is quite huge. At 82%, 5.6 trips per year. And when you compare them with Generation X, the people that were born between 1965 and 1980, they do only 4 trips per year. And when you go to the baby boomers, people like myself, born in 1964, going back to 1946, like our chairman and others, you will find that the baby boomers only do 3.5 trips per year. And if I come closer to home, to my host country currently, South Africa, out of their returns of 10.5 million international tourists in the same benchmark year of 2018, 57% were actually millennials. And if you assess domestic trips of 17.7 million, 49% were due to millennial travel. Why is generational analysis important? It is exactly, Chairperson, for the reason that you have brought up this topic, by capturing children and the youth, that we must focus on generational analysis in terms of market share and understanding their needs, their aspirations, and challenges. Generational Y millennials have been raised in an environment saturated with advanced technology, your desktops, your laptops, your smartphones, internet, and they are constantly plugged to technology. And this has transformed the way they communicate and with the outside world. And therefore, generational classifications become very, very important. They are important to the extent that I also bring forward for you, just for case study and referencing, what is happening in the United States, for example, with generational Y consumers. It is projected that by year 2025, this category of Y and Zs, the millennials, the children, the youth, would be 46% of the United States income. And if you are in this industry, the tourism industry, and you don't know who they are and what they want, you'll be unable to capture not even a single dollar of their money. Furthermore, it is also important to know that as nation spending power decreases, that is the boomers, people like us, who are actually the wealth owners across the world. As our significance recedes, it means the succeeding generation, the Y and Zs, assume wealth importance, they assume center place. So labeling of generations becomes very, very, very key. And in our own African context, what is important going forward is to make sure that we answer their aspirations. The first one is that if you are going to target Y and Z travel, you must have the necessary ICT infrastructure across the continent that connects them. Without that, you will not be able to tap into this market. You must also facilitate their ease movement. This is a generation of people that are not as traditional as the X generation, who grew up knowing that they must own a house, they must marry at the appropriate age. These guys can go forever without even marrying, because they can delay their future in those areas that we have traditionally come to accept as defining humanity, because they want to discover themselves. So we have to make sure that we answer their aspirations in the areas where we can tap their income going forward into the future. So it's infrastructure in ICT, it's infrastructure in transport. You would not ordinarily find them spending money on a business class ticket. They travel conveniently, yes, but they don't spend in the manner that the X generation and the baby boomers and the silent generation of the 1946 spend in hotels. You would most likely find them, if they travel into Europe, staying in hostels. Our hostel facilities ready in Africa for this generation of travelers? Do we understand that our hostel facilities in schools can also lend themselves to accommodation facilities for this generation? And money is made in the value chain. They would normally stay, do homestays in other countries like Europe. Is Africa ready for homestays that are leveraged by this generation as they travel and traverse the continent? So I submit, Chairperson, so that I don't patronize this platform, that we begin to understand the tastes, aspirations, and challenges of this generation, the millennials, if we are going to tap into their dollar, if we are going to tap into their potential, which is currently sitting at 20–30% across the continent, but which can replace 3 times the X generation in the near future, if we use our 2063 benchmarks aligned to the African Union. They will replace the X generation. And we must begin to answer whether we are ready to tap into their potential. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Walter. Am I audible now? I believe so. Yes, thank you so much for highlighting, all the issues that you did highlight, issues with, the importance of getting data, statistics, and then realizing that our young generation, they're mostly technology savvy. We have to design travel packages that appeal to our young ones, so children and the youths, and also the issues with policy integration and making plans and provision for them in how we come up with our policies. The government comes up with the policies and the frameworks to develop tourism in Africa. If you're just joining us, this is the African Tourism Board virtual celebration of the International Day of the African Child. It's a day that celebrates, the African children, and it's also a day for sober reflections because way back in 1976, the Soweto children, some children in Soweto protested the conditions of their education, and they were shot and killed, by military, by armed men and by the military, at the time. So this is a very, very, emotional event, and it also provides governments, organizations, and stakeholders all over the world, the opportunity to bring to the front burner the issues and the challenges and aspirations of our children, of our youths. So we're here gathered to discuss how tourism can be more viable for our youth and our children. So I welcome you. If you fall into the category of your age category, your age range is below 18, I welcome you powerfully. Today is your day. Today you're celebrated. I want to assure you on behalf of African Tourism Board that we raise our flag in solidarity. We stand with you. We believe in you. We love you, and we're here for you. So happy International Day of the African Child. Our next speaker is, he needs little or no introduction. He is the executive chairperson of the African Tourism Board. He is with us here today live. By name, Mr. Cuthbert Nube. He is also the CEO of Kwela Fleet Management, South Africa. He's the owner and managing director of Golden Feathers Hotel, Cape Town, and also a former regional vice president and board member of the United Nations World Tourism Organization. He is the non-executive director of African Tourism Partners and also a non-executive director of Sustainable Tourism Partnership Program. He is seasoned and he is experienced, and today he's with us to discuss from his wealth, to bring from his wealth of experience in the tourism industry. He's a tourism executive, and he's held leadership positions within the international and regional organizations. His mandate at the African Tourism Board is to leverage strategic relationships in the industry and beyond to unify Africa's efforts in positioning herself as a tourism destination powerhouse. Cuthbert has had the honor to share his knowledge in the tourism industry as a guest speaker at various local, regional, and international conferences. He's a passionate humanitarian. Cuthbert is involved in several community development initiatives in his personal capacity, and he enjoys music and a sport of gardening during his free time. Thank you so much, Mr. Cuthbert Nube. You are welcome to this session. It's now on to you, and you have the floor to discuss and share your thoughts on transforming the tourism industry in Africa for our children and youths. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Chair. I really appreciate, as usual and as normal, dear friends and colleagues and partners within the tourism space, and all to our participants. We have joined us from all over the world. My brother Walter, you have dedicated your time and energy within the tourism space. It is always an honor to emulate and walk on your footsteps. My role model and mentor, my brother, Ubaba Unene, we are deeply honored to have you here with us. My friend Ndipiwe Ntuli, we have fought side by side on the trenches towards our liberation for our political and economical emancipation. I thank you so much. And our Ambassador Makato, always an inspiration to see you in action. Julian, your broader insights and love in ecological conservation has impacted positively within the tourism space. Friends, as we epitomize an uncommon humanist that inspired our young people to defy the forces that refused the basic human rights of our nations and our citizens. Our young people laid their lives for social justice and political emancipation. As we celebrate this day as icons of irreversible social, economic, and political change, may I hasten to point the transformation and real economic emancipation is still far-fetched to this day. As African Tourism Board, we strongly believe tourism as an economic development tool in our continent and therefore stands as a power vehicle for economic growth and job creation all over the world. Today's generation of young people are more informed, more mobile, and more adventurous than ever before. Youth travel is one of the fastest growing and most dynamic markets of the global sector within the tourism space. Our young people are invariable at the leading edge of change and innovation, and the travel industry is no exception. Young people think outside the box. They push for boundaries and experiment with the new in an era of unprecedented challenges for the travel industry. Youth travel represents not just an important market segment, but also a vital resource for innovation and change. Our statistics, colleagues, has shown that around 20% of the international tourists who traveled the world in the last decades were young people. Yet, the importance of this market goes far beyond the numbers. Our young people have been recognized as a major force for development and social change. This is true also for tourism, with youth travelers leading positive change in the sector, investing in local tourism businesses, and championing environmental protection. As such, youth travel is one of the most promising paths towards a more responsible and sustainable tourism sector. Youth travelers seeking to interact with and make a difference to the lives of local communities have also been decisive in encouraging dialogue and mutual understanding between various cultures. The power of youth travel provides an up-to-date overview of the major characteristics and trends of this exciting market, highlighting its importance to governments and business leaders worldwide, especially our emphasis is within our continent. It also draws attention to the issues that need to be addressed to ensure that more and more of our young people around the world can continue to benefit from the enriching experience that travel brings for travelers and the communities they visit. We need to acknowledge the myth of employment in the tourism sector. Hard labor, overwork, and low pay. To dispel this myth and open the sector for more entrepreneurial youth, governments need to focus on creating more opportunities for our youth We need to set up training centers and encourage them to find their place within the tourism industry. In addition to job creation, tourism also provides opportunities for entrepreneurship. Given the low barriers to entry, it makes it possible for new entrants, particularly women and the youth, to get into business. So therefore, tourism is an opportunity for youth to show their love of our beautiful continent. It's natural beauty and diversity. A new generation of young entrepreneurs should now promote their countries to the world. Tourism education plays a pivotal role in preparing our students to gain professional and practical skills required by the tourism industry. Given that the tourism industry is a labor-intensive sector, it is undeniable, therefore, that practical training is as important as theoretical training. In tourism, the education, practical training is necessary for students to find the opportunity to apply what they have learned into practice and to develop personal skills and abilities. We need to commit and to recognize the value of mentoring in ensuring competent leadership of the tourism sector, providing our students and our young professionals interested in working in any area of the tourism industry value chain the opportunity to work with experienced industry professionals who are willing to share their expertise and their knowledge. So therefore, our youth need to be matched with an appropriate experienced professional in a specific area, which may lead to employment at the mentor's place of business. Ladies and gentlemen, tourism is half exposed treasure chest. The lid is half open, and not many of our people can get to the jewels. If we all work together, we can prise the lid open so that the benefits of tourism and the natural and cultural heritage of our continent can be shared by our youth and with all our children. May we work together as we propel, as we progress, as we are looking at the rebounds back of our sector within the tourism sector. Let us work together, the opportunity, the window that has been opened, let us utilize it to the fullest and afford our young people to also be role players within the tourism space. Thank you so much, Chair. We really appreciate.
Thank you so much for the expose. Thank you so much, Chairperson of the African Tourism Board, for your uncommon wisdom and insight into issues facing our young people when it comes to African tourism. Thank you so much. At this moment, we had our young people put together some video. We have from Kenya, children from Kenya and young people from Kenya, from Nigeria, and from Zulu Natal in South Africa. So we're going to be presenting to you all the presentation of Kenyan young people right now. Please stay right there and don't move a muscle. You might just miss the amazing moments of this webinar. Thank you.
Abigail, volume, sound.
It should give a volume. I don't know why it's not. Okay. Okay, while we sort that out, I would want to have our next speaker, Jian Blackbird. She is the CEO of Victoria Falls Regional Association. She is very experienced. She's a professional and expertise in the tourism industry. Her passion lies in African tourism and conservation. She's been leading the industry for over 10 years, specifically marketing. First for a Southern African hotel and resort chain, followed by 5 years as director for marketing and product development at Botswana Tourism Organization, followed by being a director for Africa for the World Travel and Tourism Association. She is now the CEO, as mentioned earlier, of the Victoria Falls Regional Tourism Association, the first purely private sector driven organization representing the entire KwaZulu region, that is Botswana, Namibia, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, which is undertaking an ambitious destination marketing strategy and campaign at all levels of the tourism supply chain. Gillian's passions extend to conservation and managing the Endangered Wildlife Trust at Hoko Mila for 5 years and continues to support projects that link tourism with conservation. Over the past years, she has spoken at international conferences and events on the importance of intra-African travel and opportunities and challenges for the sector across the African continent. I welcome you, Jian Blackbird. I believe that you're here with us, and I want to ask you to please share your thoughts on tourism, the pandemic, and the educational growth of the African child. Over to you, Jian.
Well, thank you everybody for having me, and thank you for the African Tourism Board for organizing this wonderful coming together of both us people who were once African children and hopefully the children that are watching and able to share this momentous coming together of information. And I thought I'd just start adding a few more statistics, and I know statistics are very boring, but they set a place for us to think about where the African child is going to move from tourism. And the World Bank estimated right now in sub-Saharan Africa, 13% of the world's working age is in Africa. And by 2030, that will increase to 17%. And of that 17%, 60% of that working population are over 25. What that really means, and what is very significant about the working population, is that by 2030, a quarter of the world's total under 25 population will reside in Africa. And if we bring that forward to how do we see our African child growing into a participate in tourism? The WTTC estimates that 1 in 9 jobs right now are in tourism, but 1 in 5 new jobs will be in tourism. So if you add that to the 1/4 of under 25 population to 1 in 5 new jobs, we realize the importance of what tourism poses for the African child. And there's 2 areas that, for me, I feel that are important to look at. The first one being that children can find a real employment. And what I mean by real employment in tourism is not just any old job. They can find valuable jobs that allow them to work in their home regions, whether that's in a rural area or an urban area, and grow to be professionals in this industry. The hospitality industry offers a huge variety of work that people can go into. And if it poses 1 in 5 jobs, it's a tremendous opportunity for the African child. The biggest threat to Africa, whether you're looking at poverty or conservation of our natural resources, is the lack of opportunity of our young people to work in jobs that create value for themselves and livelihood for their families. But I'd also like to talk later on about one other point. Our children are the future of African tourism. And if we bring that into an intra-African tourism perspective, we can realize that our children are also the future travelers. And we have a responsibility as the African Tourism Board, as national tourism boards, as marketing agencies and private sector, to engage children from a very young age to realize that they are the future travelers of the new world. And they're the people who will support us and create resilience in the tourism industry by being consumers of our product. When we talk about jobs, things don't happen overnight. And we need to have some changes in our systematic approach towards education. A 4-year program in universities to study hospitality and tourism. And I think that we need to instigate a change in the way we treat education and tourism. Real value can come from smaller jobs, from the service sector. People who work in jobs such as hospitality, chefs, people within the reservation system, all have a possibility of having well-worth jobs. There needs to be value on all levels of the supply chain. It shouldn't just be the focus on who's going to be the next manager. And we need to work on more vocational service sector training. This is something that will change the perspective of young people entering into the tourism perspective. Young people need to feel that when they come out of hospitality training, even if it's a vocational course, they have value and have an opportunity for a lifetime work. This is something that needs to change. We also need to see tourism work recognized within schools from a very, very young age. It needs to show that work within the tourism sector is something that people would like to enter into. So long in Africa, when you talk to your parents and they say to you, your elders, what are you going to do? Most people would have responded, oh, I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be a doctor. And I think that there needs to be a change from the very youngest children in nursery school and in primary school to see that tourism is a valuable option and they can be just as important as our lawyers and our doctors. So it's very much changing the perspective from a young age. It's also looking at engagement of our children in the things that support our tourism proposition. In terms of conservation, children need to understand the value of wildlife, the value of preserving the natural heritage. And there's many programs that are instigated by private sector. I know, for example, in the Tuli region, Children of the Wilderness is a program that links a high-end overland cycling tour between Botswana, Zimbabwe, and South Africa, and raising funds for children who are living in rural areas surrounding the tourism proposition.
It's 11 o'clock.
Is it allows people to engage, the young children to engage in the wilderness programs and understand the benefit of what preserving this natural resource has on their opportunities. But I'd like to end this in talking about inspiring. We are all proud African citizens, and we have the privilege to travel around this continent. We also need to think about marketing and this privilege that we understand we would like to travel to other African countries, but so many of our population are growing middle class. When they think about tourism, they think about traveling to Paris, or Disneyland, or maybe to Hong Kong. We need to inspire the children and the children's parents in Africa to think of tourism as somewhere you would like to travel within our own continent. Tourism is about going to spend one night outside of your home, and it can be 50 kilometers away. It can be something extraordinarily special, and we need our children to understand you don't need to travel to Paris to see a World Heritage Site. We have them in our own backyard. You don't need to travel to Disneyland to be entertained. You're entertained every day. You don't need to travel to Dubai to go for shopping hubs. There's shopping hubs across the continent. Our African children are our future, and their reliance on traveling into Africa will make us more resilient. And COVID-19 will never, ever have a chance to hit us as hard if we have Africans traveling within the tourism proposition. Thank you, Abigail, and everybody else for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for that great presentation. I love the highlights on the issue of jobs and the fact that our youths are our future travelers and even present consumers and present travelers as well. And how you highlighted the importance of educating them about the beauty of the continent, and we don't need the pressure of, oh, I need to travel out of the continent, or I need to go to France, I need to find, those nations are appreciated, but we also have very beautiful assets and resources in Africa. For our young people, resources, the knowledge about the continent, onto them. So thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. Right now, we are going quickly to have the presentation from our youths from KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Prashanta.
And I am Zoe. We would like to tell you a little bit about KwaZulu-Natal. KwaZulu-Natal is fondly known as the Zulu Kingdom, is arguably South Africa's most diverse province of diversity of cultures, scenery, attractions, and experiences, including 2 heritage sites.
From regions rich in battlefields and monuments to majestic mountains and tranquil rolling hills that beckon you to relax and unwind, to savannas and bushvelds teeming with wildlife, and to tropical beaches and the warm Indian Ocean. With all this at your disposal, there are sure to be some memorable romantic moments to be had. Welcome to KwaZulu-Natal.
Wow, thank you so much, you again. Thank you, all our young people from KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, for that beautiful presentation. Quickly, we're going to our next speaker, Mr. Musa Nene. He was appointed as the Minister of Finance in South Africa from February 2018 to October 2018. And he was also appointed as Minister of Finance in May 2014 and December 2015. He was Deputy Minister of Finance of the Republic of South Africa from 5th November 2008 to May 2014. He was a member of the Local Organizing Committee, the LOC, for the Orange African Nations Championship South Africa 2014. He was a member of the Local Organizing Committee for the FIFA 2010 Soccer World Cup. He was also a member of the Local Organizing Committee for the Africa Cup of Nations, AFCON. He was a chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Finance from August 2005 until 4th November 2008. He was a co-chairperson of the Joint Budget Committee from October 2002 until August 2005. He was a member of Parliament since June 1999, chairperson of the Public Investment Corporation from 2008 to 2014, chairperson of Tujambili Hospital Board, resident advisor at Thebi Investment. And he is also a non-executive director at Allen Gray. Please join me to welcome Mr. Musa Nene. Pardon me, please. I haven't finished reading out his profile, but I want him to be on standby. He organized the first ever strike in the financial industry under the banner of Sakawu in 1990, while still at Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. He was a chairperson of Tujambili Development Forum from 1994 until 1999. He was the ANC local government councillor and caucus chairperson from 1996 until 1999. He was a chairperson of Transcorp Policing Forum from 1997 until 1999. He was the ANC regional secretary of Kalamba region from 1997 until 2000. He was the regional administrative manager for the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company for 15 years. This is a very rich work profile. I welcome you, Mr. Nene. You're most welcome. You're to share your thoughts on how we can transform the tourism industry for our children and youths. How can we make this possible?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Abigail, and greetings to all of you from across the length and breadth of our continent and the world. It is indeed my singular honor and privilege to share my views and be part of such an esteemed panel. I do not want to mention all of you by name, but thank you for allowing me time to share my, a little experience in this, not in the tourism industry, but in the school of life. As you have seen, my profile says that I have been around. And in 1976, during the Soweto uprisings, which actually hit the entire country, I was 18 years old and in matric. So that says it all about the bruises that one has. And also as we commemorate, but also celebrate, the valiant struggles of our youth during that time, who paid most of them who paid the ultimate price. But here we are today. And, just to quote the words of one clever individual who said, whether it is porn, sorry parents, they've seen it all. Information on terrorist groups, cyberbullying, social justice issues, or finding a misfit tribe, Generation Z have digested it all and are wise beyond their years, writes this wise Diom Chang. Now, when talking about the youth, and a lot of the speakers before me have actually, made the point about, the demographic dividends that we have, ranging from Walter Mzembi, who went into detail on this subject. But as we gathered here electronically at a time when the global travel and tourism sector is facing one of its worst crises in recent memory, the need to minimize human interaction so the world can arrest the spread of COVID-19 pandemic meant that travel and tourism had to be shut down, as we have seen, and it's for that reason that we're here. But this presents us with opportunities that I think create space for young, innovative minds to be able to take advantage of this, especially in the tourism and travel space. But this crisis shall pass, ladies and gentlemen. When that will be, I do not have the crystal ball to tell you, but what is known and what is certain is when it does, the world will have to resume traveling and visiting places of interest. But it will never be the same again. And I'm glad that you introduced me by playing that video of young people from my province in KwaZulu-Natal. Durban is just a few kilometers away from my place. Now, as this might take a while, as tourism is driven by confidence, ours is therefore to put plans in place, and that's why we get it like this, so that, when the world reopens, as it'll never be the same again, we address issues and that tourism actually takes its rightful place again. Now, travel and tourism are and can be a big contributors to socio-economic development, as we all know. It accounts for more than 10% of global GDP. Now, coming to my topic for today, which is about transforming the tourism industry for children and youths. This, in my view, and as I've made, can be achieved in 3 areas. One is that young people are consumers of tourism services, and we have had the numbers being put forward. 2, that young people are as employees in this sector. And thirdly, that young people are, owners of businesses that provide tourism services. And we spoke about the entrepreneurial spirit that comes out of young people. Young people are an important contributor to tourism, as we've heard. Let's take an example of Australia, where youth defined as being aged between 15 and 29 years. They contribute about 25% of all spending by visitors in that country. And according to data by Tourism Australia, there are 2.3 million youth visitors to that country. There were 2 million of them, more than 2 million of them in 2018, spending about $20 billion that year alone. If I may stay with that same example, Australia has what is called the Working Holiday Maker Program, which allows youth from eligible partner countries to work in Australia while having an extended holiday. This experience shows that young people tend to stay longer, to spend more, and to travel more around the country than other tourist segments. Now, our continent has one of the most youthful population globally. The continent has more than 420 million young people aged between 25 and 35. Now, by 2050, it is estimated that this number will have doubled. Now, each year, according to the African Development Bank, between 10 million and 12 million young Africans enter the job market. Yet, African countries have been able to create only 3 million formal jobs every year. That just shows the gap that we still have to address. Now, most of the young people in our continent have limited skills or unskilled. On the other hand, the continent has a huge tourism potential. Now, combining these two, Africa can absorb millions of its young people into the tourism industry. We therefore must link a revival of our tourism industry to young development and skilling. Now, according to the ILO data, half of all workers in the global hotels, catering and tourism sector are young people under the age of 25. Now, tourism, therefore, can be a big absorber of the young people in our continent. Many of the jobs in tourism sector are high energy pursuits that are best suited to young people, as they require employers to stand or to walk most of the time. Now, employment is, of course, the area which will absorb the majority of our young people. Now, turning to the last area that I would want to touch, as I said, is entrepreneurship in this space. We should not underestimate the potential of young people starting their businesses. Tourism services, especially those operated in our rural areas and the townships, can be a launch pad for young people into entrepreneurship. Elements of a tourism service business require very little capital, and as I think Cuthbert put it, that it also has low barriers to entry. For example, you can actually start as a tour guide, subcontracting your services to an existing firm, and slowly build capital and experience that you can leverage into a more full-scale tourism business. That our development financial institutions, the private sector, tourism agencies, and municipalities can do to nurture youth entrepreneurship in tourism. So the long and short of it is that it is not us that will create opportunities for young people. All that we need to do is to create an environment that is conducive to young people that, in entering the space, and they are ready to do that. And ladies and gentlemen, I think it is the time, and as one of our leaders also put it, that a country that ignores their youth does not embrace its own future, and therefore doesn't have a future. Thank you for the opportunity.
Wow, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Mr. Nene, for that mind-blowing presentation. I love the facts and the points that you brought to the fore about, of course, the economic value of tourism, and also our youths being potential employees in the tourism industry, being business owners because of the entrepreneurial spirit, yet they have limited skills, limited training, so we have to open up that space and make it bigger and wider. I also love what you said about creating the right environment. The opportunities are there, but we need to create a right environment for young people to access the opportunities in Africa's tourism space. Thank you so much for that beautiful presentation. If Mr. Ndefiri Ntuli might please be on standby. I would like to tell us all that if you have a question, please do not hesitate to send it to the chat room, or when we begin the question and answer session, just indicate by clicking on the hand. Click on the hand and indicate that you have a question, or better still, send your question to the chat room. So our next speaker, Mr. Ndefiri Ntuli. 1 second, and I will let you in on his amazing profile. Now, he is an accomplished public servant, having spent 18 years of his career in government and state-owned agencies in South Africa. He joined government in 1997, and when I say government, I mean government of South Africa, in 1997 as Ministerial Chief of Staff, and later served as a divisional director at the then Department of Environmental Affairs and Tourism, DEAT. His experience spans different sectors, including travel and tourism, aviation, transport, as well as environmental affairs. Ndefiri's contributions were notable at Airport Company, South Africa, where he was head of group relations, also responsible for enterprise development at South African Tourism, where he was country manager for Japan and South Korea, based in Tokyo, Japan. And before this, at the Department of Environmental Affairs and Tourism, DEAT, where he rigorously drove intergovernmental policy coordination and international tourism promotion, which brought to fruition landmark cooperation agreements with foreign aid agencies, I beg your pardon, and governments. A courageous youth activist and student leader in the pre-1994 apartheid South Africa. Ndefiri is now an independent consultant and on marketing, stakeholder management, and communications. You're most welcome, Mr. Ntuli. You're welcome. It's your session now.
Thank you very much.
And we want you to kindly share your perspective on the theme, targeting children. Targeting children. We want to clinically examine how we can best target this demographic, the children and the youths in Africa's tourism development. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Program Director and Chairperson. To our former ministers who've eloquently given very exciting presentations, distinguished guest speakers and colleagues in the industry, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. Well, good afternoon. I think it's appropriate for us to first give tribute to the many who fought gallantly in what started as the Soweto uprisings in Soweto, South Africa, and a movement that became a massive drive for social change, for justice and freedom. Those uprisings put, or rather cast into the center stage, the demands that in essence were articulated in the Freedom Charter, a document which would later form as the foundation for the writing of South Africa's constitution. As a former student leader myself, I must at the outset pay tribute to all the progressive student movements across the continent, and especially here at home. Organizations such as NUSAS, SASO, AZASO, SANSCO, and SASCO. We must thank them for their contribution to the struggle for our liberation. For a long time, it is the youth who have taken up the struggles of a new generation. You will remember the generations of Mandela in the ANC of the 1940s. These are the struggles for economic freedom, access to education, access to economic opportunities, access to land, and generally opportunities that must change the conditions of young people. It is the youth everywhere across the continent who remind us that our colonial past remains firmly with us. It is the youth that reminds us that our past has not changed, that therefore liberation is not complete as long as millions of young people still live jobless and remains on the margins of society. This is the youth that today has become so despondent, frustrated by having to sit at home, despite having degrees, diplomas, certificates, and so on, they sit at home because they lack opportunities. It is therefore our responsibility as governments, and especially as business in the travel and tourism sector, to really open up these opportunities for young people. Of course, there are pockets of good stories out there. It's not all gloom and doom. The good stories of young people who are making a difference in their communities, in their societies, but these are too far small and at times unnoticeable. What better way, therefore, Program Director, for us today on this occasion hosted by the African Tourism Board to remind ourselves of both the challenges and the opportunities that are available to young people, and especially the tourism sector. We are reminded once again that tourism is one of the areas of the economy that has the greatest potential to create almost immediate jobs, to create young entrepreneurs, to present business opportunities to young people. It is, in fact, tourism that has the greatest potential to create and sustain jobs. I will not dwell on the statistics of the WTTC, just in terms of the propensity of the sector to contribute to the economy. You will know, of course, that 10.3% of global GDP, tourism accounts for 10.3% of global GDP. This equates to about 8.9 trillion, which is a contribution to world GDP. You also look on the other end in terms of the capital investment in the sector itself, which is around 948 billion, which accounts for 4.3 of total investment in the economy. Therefore, we must, based on this, appreciate the fact that across the African continent, our governments have embraced the important role that tourism plays in the economy. It is therefore upon us to make sure that as business and as government, we collaborate, form social partnerships that open up opportunities to young people across the tourism value chain, whether this is in the travel space, aviation, airlines, and so on. I normally use the example of our Tambo. Imagine our Tambo International Airport, which receives over 40 million passengers every year. Every day, 20,000 people wake up and go to work at OR Tambo, interacting and servicing over 60,000 people each day. OR Tambo is a mix of a varied opportunities for business, for young entrepreneurs, and you can quote examples, whether it's in the airlines, airport operations, maintenance of aircrafts, car rentals, services and supplies, retail. Imagine the possibilities. Two key important factors that make it possible for these 20,000 people to wake up every day is driving the numbers of arrivals to South Africa. It is therefore important that our destination brands across the continent are promoted and vigorously positioned. I think former Minister Walter mentioned that one of the biggest challenges post-corona is to ensure that we recover quickly and we reposition our destinations so we can see more and more numbers of visitors arriving almost immediately after corona. It is the numbers that drives, it is the arrival numbers that drive the opportunities. It is the arrival numbers that determine how we best position our products and ready those products to receive and service the volumes of traffic that South Africa gets. This brings me to 3 points that I really want to emphasize today as a way of embracing young people and creating opportunities for them. The first is that it is important for our governments to create the instruments that are necessary to support young people access these opportunities. I'll use an example here in South Africa of the National Youth Agency. The National Youth Agency has, over the past couple of years, created about over 6,000 startup youth entrepreneurs and helped create more than 18,000 new jobs. This is for young people. What, of course, we could not get from the statistics is how many of these are in the tourism sector itself. The important point, of course, is that institutional mechanisms to support entrepreneurial development of young people is important. We have other examples of institutions, initiatives like the Youth Employment Service in South Africa, which has placed over 18,000 young people in employment opportunities and providing business infrastructure and support through its community hubs that is established. That's the first point, institutional support. The second point is, of course, skills development, a dedicated focus on skills development. I think Minister Nene did mention, emphasize the point that skills in the sector are crucial, that young people must be able to access institutions that outside of formal employment help them gain the necessary technical skills and competencies to be able to make a meaningful contribution at the areas of work that they are in. Coupled with these institutions that the kids can support, can access, is also a dedicated programs by the private sector, by the organizations or companies that employ the youth, helping these young people to progress through their own places of work. It is often that you find young people in the places of work who, yes, have jobs, but you find that they do not get quality support to progress through the organizations that they serve or companies that they work for. The third point that I think is important is the access to funding for those young people who've got brilliant ideas to start their own institutions, to start their own companies, have their own initiatives that they can access without really depending on looking for jobs everywhere they go. I think probably in just bringing my points to a close, Chair. Sorry, Ma'am, I'm just got messed up with my papers here. I once again just want to make the point about repositioning our destination brands post-corona, and how, and I think Minister Nene did mention this, and how quickly we can allow our destinations to recover from the devastating effects of corona. It is, of course, unavoidable that tourism by its very nature is about human contact, is about people movement, people visiting each other, people visiting places. And therefore, how we reposition our brands, which of course, the African countries, as was mentioned by Minister Walter, have really taken less of the knock on the effects of the corona globally. And we need to really capitalize on that to drive the numbers. It is the numbers that create opportunities for young people. With those little contribution, Chair and Program Director, I would like to end my note there.
Wow, thank you so much. It's very clear and expository. One major point, I'm going to just highlight one of the points you made. You made amazing points, and I have noted everything. But then you talked about access to funding, which I think, because we find that many of our youths have beautiful ideas, they're talented, but then because of lack of funds, they are limited, and I love this. I love how you brought this out beautifully. After this event, I'm very optimistic that yes, we're going to scale this discussion and have this involved in plans and policy frameworks of Africa's national governments, to make provision for children and youths, and also to help them to access the various employment opportunities. Ideally, Africa is not supposed to have issues with unemployment. So thank you so much, Mr. Ntuli. We're moving on quickly. Now we are at the question and answer session, but before then, we're going to take you on a cruise to the great nation of Nigeria. And afterwards, we're going to have a question and answer session. Please, if you have a question, kindly indicate by raising your hands when we begin the question and answer session, or send your question to the chat room, and it will be picked up from there and addressed. So we're going to have the question and answer session after this video, and also after the question and answer session, we're going to have a vote of thanks to round up today's session by Ambassador Dimakatso Mawela, who is the chairperson of the Ambassadors Forum of the African Tourism Board that facilitated this meeting. Thank you so much. Can we have the clip on Nigeria now? Thank you.
The power of storytelling is a wonderful gift to the African child. Its power is beyond the wildest of dreams. I have traveled the length and breadth of this great and mighty nation called Nigeria. Not physically, but through the transporting power of storytelling. Stories taught me by one of the greatest storytellers ever. They tell me about the great food, the awesome places, music, animals we can only see in our country. Can you just imagine? Well, I don't have to. Why? Because I see them all. From the great rocks of Ogun State to the long rivers, soothing and the peaceful sounds of nature at the Yankari Game Reserve of Bauchi State. The sights of the rocks, rivers, beaches, they're all so beautiful. Also wonderful to see and be in Nigeria.
Welcome back from Nigeria, virtually. That presentation was brought to you by Proud African Roots, a Nigerian-based organization that celebrates and helps children and youths to imbibe the culture of appreciating culture and tourism values and leadership values as well. So this brings us to our question and answer session. Please, like I said earlier, if you have any questions, kindly indicate by a show of hand. You would find the icon at the base of your screen. Just click on it and we will take your question. Or you may just send your question to the chat room and it will be picked up and addressed immediately at the next available time. I want to start with Dr. Mzembi right now. And before then, I want to encourage our young people to please ask questions. Feel free to ask questions. Feel free to make a comment. Feel free to make a contribution. As you see that we do not have any youth speaker. So this is your opportunity to let us know from your perspective how we can target children and youths for Africa's tourism development, for them to access better opportunities. So this is the time that you can make your contribution. So Dr. Mzembi, you talked about designing packages to appeal to our young people. I would want you to take this further and explain what are those things that we need to take into consideration. Right here in this meeting, there are so many service providers, so many tour operators. So it will be of great value if we also highlight how they can better design these packages. What are your thoughts, Dr. Mzembi? Do we have him with us? All right.
There's a take home.
Okay.
If we are going to be useful in this knowledge economy that I was trying to describe, a number of things have got to take place. The first one is designing an institutional framework, a combination of policies and structures. One of the things that you had, Chairperson, within the context of your committee is free movement and travel facilitation. We have to come to a point where we understand that the gains of travel and tourism that we applaud up to pre-COVID-19 were born on the back of openness. Openness in visa facilitation, openness in travel facilitation, openness in destinations. We were an open checkbook as destinations, open to source markets. Okay? So our policy reframing must take that into consideration, that we have to recalibrate our way back to openness, because right now borders are shut, airports are closed, no airlines are flying, and tourism is about source markets and destinations. It's about arrivals, as the last speaker was alluding to. And unless we get to that point where we understand that the only way that tourism will come back is through capturing arrivals, whether they are domestic, regional, or international, they are a significant and the most important factor in capturing the viability of this sector. So we have to quickly relook at that policy mix and structures. That incentivizes, one, for the youth that we're talking about, entrepreneurship, the collection and storage, deployment and utilization and dissemination of knowledge. The second thing is to ensure the availability of adequate and skilled labor, the training aspect. We have been pushed into a new realm of attuning ourselves to digitalization. Many of us are in remote jobs. What does it take now to do remote work, virtual tourism, for example? This is the space where our youth will be most active because they are techno-savvy. Okay, so they have to enter that space of virtuality. What we are doing right now is virtual conferencing. Okay, it is a new space. Where is the role of the youth in all this? Where is the role of the youth in my tourism that is done virtually? Okay, where is the role of the youth in motivating and incentivizing and appetizing a traveler in virtual tourism? So we want to see them in that space. The third aspect that we have to deal with is the provision of adequate ICT infrastructure and flexible options for access. I think I belabored the point in my last presentation. We simply have to develop a whole new footprint of ICT infrastructure in Africa to connect the remotest of parts if we're going to integrate our children and the youth. I told you that they are obsessed with apps. A backpacker today does not carry food. If he's in the Y and Z generation, they carry apps. So we have to adequately provide for them in that space. Then of course, lastly is a vibrant culture and environment which promotes innovation, including stakeholders in the academic, public and private sectors. I think if we address all these four, we should be able to see where the opportunity exists for our young people. We have to create an enabling environment, and that's where we are, yeah.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Walter Mzembi, for highlighting further, how we can break this down and include in our policy frameworks. Thank you so much. I have about 15 more minutes for this session. Please let me know if we have any questions from our audience. I would want to.
Can I add
Okay, we have a question.
No, it's Fatima Fernandez. I would like to contribute to what was just said now previously. I like the idea that you speak about the youngsters need to get involved with the virtual tourism idea. when I was in Italy last year, somebody introduced that idea. Well, it was virtual teaching and not so much virtual tourism, but the idea was that the students would go and capture their environment and they would bring it into the classroom. And if it was up to a certain standard, you could send it to Google, and if Google approved it, then it would go onto Google's website. Now, it's something that I thought was a brilliant idea because it was people living in an isolated island that nobody knew about. And by capturing it on a virtual, these youngsters captured it and sent it to Google. And that's how the rest of the world got to see their isolated island. So it's definitely something that one could look into with the tourism, because it is, tourism is going to be totally different as we know it, because as you rightfully said, speaker, that what we're doing now is virtual conferencing, and it seems like it's going to be the new norm. And there goes a chunk of our tourists, because I mean, you would travel around the world to go to a conference, and then you would extend it a week, to a week, so that you could go and see the different sites of that particular country or island, where now that's not going to happen anymore. So our approach to tourism has to, we need to think outside the box, because we cannot rely on conferences or workshops or et cetera, that before we did, as a country, you would, I mean, working at UNISA, you organize a conference and you're going to have different people coming from different parts of the world to come to the conference, and you make sure that they get to, you organize a game drive, et cetera. So yes, I just wanted to add to, one must possibly look at how can one get our youth taking particular virtual videos and offering it to Google and letting them place it so that the rest of the world can see Africa. That is what I wanted to say, but thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your beautiful contribution. We appreciate. Do we have any more contributions or questions?
I don't think you see the hands. There is Barbara. She has been raised.
Okay. Let's see now. Okay, I can't see the hands.
If you click on participants, you will see it on the right side.
Okay. Oh, yes, I see Barbara Tanyayiwa.
Yes.
Yeah, 1 second, please. Okay. Yes. Wow. Sorry, Barbara. Hello. Hello, Barbara. Yeah, we can't hear. We can't hear Barbara. Hello, Barbara, can you hear me? Hello, Barbara. If you can hear me, just say yes. Because we could not hear you at all. Can you hear me? Oh my, I don't know what's wrong, but we couldn't hear you. Yes, we can barely hear you. Just try to say something. Wow.
The presentation for the
sorry. Hello, Barbara. Hello. Hello. Hello, Barbara. Please, could you please send your question or contribution to the chat room, because the audio is not good. Kindly send your question or contribution to the chat room, please, if you don't mind. We couldn't hear you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. A quick check if we have any other. Oh, so many. Okay. Can we have Lydia Lukuba? We can have Lydia Lukuba to ask her question. Can you unmute your microphone and ask a question? Lydia?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please ask the question. Make your contribution. Thank you.
Okay. My question is how we can ensure that an African child, he or she gets the knowledge of tourism from day one his commercial school. Thank you.
Okay, the question is how the African child can have a better knowledge of the tourism products in Africa. I think that's, I didn't quite get you, but I hope that's what you said. I will direct this question to Jillian. Jillian, are you with us, please? What are your thoughts? Yes, could you kindly answer this question? What are your thoughts? How can we, better, present, Africa's tourism products to our children and youth? And incidentally, this was the question I was going to ask you. I was going to ask that, you talked about wildlife and all that, and other amazing tourism products. You are the CEO of Victoria Falls Regional Association, so I was going to ask you that, how can we, and you talked about marketing when you were speaking, so I was going to ask that, how can we actually market, what are those things that, how do we go about marketing, and, products that appeal to our children, to our youth? How can we reach that demographics?
Of course. So I think we need to look at it from a marketing perspective. If we're looking at them as consumers, both consumers now as children and consumers in the future, there's two ways to do that. The first way is to market and engage the parents, the people who are going to be paying for that. So what that means is not only marketing intra-African tourism that people who are on the ground can appreciate and go and experience. We also need to think about, and this comes back to product development. Have we got enough product in our markets that appeals to families, especially families within the region, intra-African families? Because obviously you won't be inspired to go anywhere if there's nothing for you as a family to do. So it's very much taking it back to the private sector and saying, how do we encourage product development? And how do we ensure that there is something that they want to do? We can't expect children to see the appreciation in tourism if they can't experience it for themselves. So it is something towards looking at private sector and developing that product, which in turn then creates opportunities for jobs across the borders. The second one is a structural issue. We have issues on visas across the board in Africa. We know these problems, and it's even harder to travel across borders with children. And so from a government perspective, we need to start thinking about border crossings that are friendly towards families and children. If you need to be stuck in a border post and you have to have 50 million copies of certified documents, you're not going to want to travel. So it is something that we need to look at structurally, and I know that this is a topic for many different discussions. And the last one is looking at marketing. Tourism is fun, and if the child doesn't see this as fun, and a lot of decisions are influenced by our children, and we've spoken a lot about children having access to technology, and there's very simple things that we're not doing as marketeers. For example, the largest social media platform as we speak is TikTok, which most marketeers don't even have within their sphere of creating social content. So I think that there's an opportunity to looking to our children, one, to develop user-generated content. So that's children in destinations being able to develop this content. TikTok, they do, they'd be in Big Falls doing a dance, and they load that onto TikTok, and it inspires other people. So I do think we need to change the way we sell things. The traditional model has always helped us sell to a baby boomer Western market, but if we want to engage children, especially the African child, our own children, we need to create product that's appealing to them and market towards them with those mechanisms.
Thank you so much. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Moderator, if I may share my experience.
Okay. Yes, please, quickly.
In Zimbabwe.
I have to round up the meeting in the next 10 minutes.
Yes, when I was tourism minister, and a typical answer to that question, which is a very important question, how you catch them young, would be first to inculcate or to induct into national curricula travel and tourism. So you start with that at a very early age, and you prescribe it within the education curricula. Whether you start as an imperative subject or extracurricular, but we have to catch them young. The second thing is know your country programs during holidays, which governments must take leadership on. Many of us would recall that we grew up going on school trips, visiting sites, but it was government taking leadership of that. So government has got to take an active role in incentivizing that area of knowing your country programs and visit Africa campaigns. Why do we pay so much money for our children to go out and visit Europe, which Gillian was raising? It's because of perception. We've been brought up knowing European history, studying European history, and we then follow it up in wanting to visit because it has been taught in our curricula. But even more importantly, to just underscore what Gillian raised, you have to sell these programs to parents. Parents would do anything for their children, provided their checklist is answered. And usually the parental consent checklist for a child before he visits on a trip includes issues like safety, political stability and security, connectivity, the ability to talk to your child. As soon as your child lands in a destination, you want to be able to talk to your child. It includes cultural issues. I would not send my girl child to a country, for example, that discriminates against girls. So parents check all these things, including health issues. Do you have potable water for children to drink? Emergency evacuation in the event that children suffer some incidental or accidental setbacks. So it's a combination of selling both to the parent, but more importantly, government taking leadership in making sure that they adopt tourism curricula in schools at a very early stage. With that, we can start visiting each other in Africa, and we can also visit within the countries themselves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Walter. Always amazing. Thank you so much for your brilliant contributions. In about 2-3 minutes, even less, I have to round up this meeting, but not without taking the vote of thanks from our the chairperson of the Ambassadors Forum of the African Tourism Board. Her name is Dimakatso Mawela. A quick run through her profile, after which I'll grant her the floor to give her vote of thanks in about a minute. Now, she is the founder and current CEO of Women of Value in South Africa, an organization that received 2019 Gauteng Premier Inclusive Economic Award for successfully implementing the Women Entrepreneurship and Enterprise Development Programs. She is the chairperson for Women of Value South Africa, an organization represented within 4 Africa sub-regions and focusing on regional economic transformation programs. She is a gender equality and social inclusion and women economic empowerment expert for the EU ecosystem development. She is currently serving as a member of the UNWTO Leadership Task Force, a committee represented by African Ministers of Tourism and currently chaired by the Ghana Minister of Tourism and Ambassador for Africa Tourism Board. She is the former SADC Women in Tourism Committee for the SADC region under formation of former RETOSA, that is Regional Tourism Organization in Southern Africa. She is the editor-in-chief for an African regional publication, Letlotlo magazine. She was the former chairperson for the Gauteng Cooperatives Provincial Working Group under the formation of the Gauteng Department of Economic Development. She's the managing director of NKPI Holding, a company that focuses on textile manufacturing and supply and MICE tourism events, technology and enterprise development consulting. And she was a finalist for the 2018 Gauteng Premier Women in Leadership Award. And then she is the chairperson, as earlier mentioned, of the Ambassadors Forum of the African Tourism Board. And that was the structure, one of the structures of the African Tourism Board that facilitated this event. Let's welcome Dimakatso, Ambassador Dimakatso Mawela. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator and Madam Chair. Mine is easy is to take this opportunity to just thank each and every member, I would say member who attended this webinar. We also want to take this opportunity for the leadership of ATB to allow us to organize and host such an event, of which we believe that it is going to contribute towards the transformation of young people into the tourism space. But maybe before I can just wrap up is to say, we all know that we just moved into a new era, of which I think young people has become more relevant like never before because of their mindset, because of their innovative. However, the organizations like ATB and other related in other sectors and stakeholders, they become more relevant to collaborate with young people in seeing that we mainstream them into our new era. And in this way, we are going to have a better continent, of which we need to learn, all of us, that with the young people, they also need to see that they are the future of Africa. And at the same time, we cannot build our Africa continent without them. And we also need to make sure that they are also getting opportunities, because at this particular moment, as a young person, if I'm attending such an event, I would want to know what is that I'm taking home? What are the opportunities that are there that I can be able to leverage on? Where are these other opportunities within the other sectors and the sectors that are very related to tourism? Because at this particular moment, when the world came to a standstill, we all want to know about our future and what is going to happen tomorrow. So with this, ATB as the organization that is international, it is saying we want to take care of the young people's needs, and we want to work together with the private sector, with the government and other international organizations in making sure that we mainstream our young people into a new economy which will be built through the tourism sector. With those few words, I would want to thank everyone, all the speakers who were presenting, and that we all have learned a lot. And I believe that we are going not to just finish here and say we had this event, but there will be some action plans, because with each and every one of us, we want to know what is that we are taking home with and what opportunities are there. Because with young people, they want to know about the opportunities. We've been talking about the challenges that are there. We've been talking about all these programs, but how, as a young person, am I going to access those opportunities? ATB and all the leaders, I would want to challenge you to say, work with young people. Let's make sure that they are able to access these opportunities, because our future, the future of Africa, it is in their hands, and they cannot do it alone, but they can do it only with us working together. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Dimakatso. Mawela, always amazing, always wonderful. Thank you. On this note, we have come to the end of our celebration of the International Day of the African Child by the African Tourism Board. I want to thank all of you, distinguished excellencies, industry veterans and stakeholders, the young people of Africa, everyone from all corners of the continent. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. You would be hearing from us from time to time. We'll send you emails, and of course, be rest assured that all points discussed in this meeting will not just remain here. We will scale it. We will, take it further, and there will be changes. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye, thank you.
Bye, everyone.